Hello Storm fans and welcome to Inside Storm. It's proudly presented by RedZed. RedZed is the Australian lender that specialises in providing loans for the self-employed. I'm Sam Hargreaves, your host, joined by Melbourne Storm royalty, of course, premiership player, former skipper Robbie Kearns. Hello, mate.
Great to be back, Sam.
It's great to have you back. Before we dive into how we went last week, and we went very well, and look ahead to this week, big clash with the Roosters. We've got a special competition for you now viewing. We've got a double pass up for grabs to one of our biggest games of the year, and it's a special day. The Anzac Day clash against the New Zealand Warriors on Sunday, April 25th. All you need to do to win is comment your score prediction for the game against the Roosters this Friday. So get typing and let us know for your chance to win. Why don't we get into the RedZed report now, Robbie? Last Saturday, we look at another big win away against the Canterbury Bulldogs at Stadium Australia, but the scoreline maybe didn't reflect the game itself.
Yeah, exactly right, Sam. I thought, obviously, going into this game, the Melbourne Storm were always going to be favourites. Obviously, the Canterbury Bulldogs yet to win a game this year. They've been really struggling with their attack, and I said last weekend that Trent Barrett would be working very hard on their attack, and sure enough, they came out and scored a few points against the Melbourne Storm. As you said, the scoreline, 52 points to 18, but the one thing Craig Bellamy wasn't really happy with was that defensive part of our game. As I said, three previous games had not scored a point. They come out and run in 3 tries. So, I mean, the boys would have been happy with the win, but the little parts of our game which we have to perfect, especially against teams such as the Roosters who are playing this weekend, we're going to have to perfect those areas to really go in with a good shot against the Roosters.
So 52 to 18 in the end. Highlight for me, we spoke about this bloke last week, George Jennings. His performance, 285 metres, the most from either side. 3 line breaks, the try assist, and his 3rd try of the season as well. What a pick-up he's been. Yeah,
he's been in sensational form. Obviously, everyone knows his brother Michael, who obviously represented New South Wales on a number of occasions as a centre. But, yeah, George has done an amazing job. I think, as you said, he ran for 285 metres. I think he had 26 runs, which is, it's uncanny for an outside back to get in and do that much work. So we've been using him as a second forward pretty much. And on top of that, I mean, he had a couple of games against Parramatta and Penrith, and he was found out a couple of times in defence, but he's trying to get better in those areas and had an amazing game last weekend.
So a couple of wins on the trots for the Storm, and this is the one that we've been building up to. Since 2017, Storm and the Roosters have played each other 9 times. Storm have won 5, Roosters 4. And before we dive into this game, let's have a look at some of the highlights of this Storm and Roosters rivalry.
Cameron Smith, you are a genius!
So there's history of thrilling finishes.
Latrell, yes, he's done it! And Jerome Hughes, he's streaking away, he's going to score a try! He's got it! He does! So here to Harrison, he kicks it! He's got it! Of rugby league.
The Storm and the Roosters. One thing we know, this will be a game of the highest quality.
Oh, what a game it's going to be Friday night. Shivers down the spine watching that. Rugby league, Robbie Kearns, is built on rivalries, and they don't come any bigger in the modern game than the Melbourne Storm and the Sydney City Roosters. So let's have a look at the team as it was announced last night. This Melbourne Storm team looking nice and settled. The additions of Felice Kafusi and Harry Grant, both Origin reps into last week's side, so they get a game under their belt. It's a strong lineup on paper and on the park.
Yeah, without a doubt. And as you said, Felice had a fine game last weekend. I thought Kenny Bromwich was one of the... he's always one of the unsung heroes in the Melbourne Storm team with so many superstars. Big Nelson, Big Jesse did a fine job. I thought the inclusion of Harry Grant last week and Brandon Smith, they're going to have to get that right. I thought Brandon Smith most probably spent a little bit too much time on the bench. But, yeah, they did a fine job last weekend, and I'm sure this team on paper will do a fine job against the Roosters this coming Friday night.
Well, the Roosters team looks pretty darn impressive as well on paper, it must be said. Let's have a look at this side coming off that win that they had last week as well. So they're in form, the Roosters, as they always tend to be. Everywhere you look, there's stars on every line for the Roosters.
Yeah, without a doubt. I think the inclusion of Jared Hargreaves coming off the bench, he strikes fear in opposition forward packs, and that's exactly what he'll do this weekend against the big Storm pack. But he's up against, as I said, Big Nas, Nelson Asofa Solomano and Jesse Bromwich. But Two guys there I think have been in outstanding form all year is the Morris brothers, Sammy. I think both these guys, like a fine red wine, getting better with age. Victor Radley's another inclusion. He came back last weekend after spending a few weeks on the sideline. But, I made mention earlier on to you, Sam Walker. Without him last weekend against Cronulla Southern Sharks, I doubt they would have won that game. So a young fella with a cool head on, big shoulders. He's doing an amazing job coming in for Luke Keary, who we all know is such a big loss for the Roosters in 2021.
11 tries on the season for Brett Morris, leads the NRL. Tedesco and Pappenhausen on 7, equal second behind him. So they've got firepower and they've got scoring potency all over the park, which is going to mean the Storm defence is going to be under pressure, but we know that that's how they like it. Let's have a look at the RedZed preview and analyse this upcoming match. The head-to-head is fascinating between these two teams, and we're going to delve a little deeper into this. But 41 times they've both played, 23 wins for the Storm, 18 for the Roosters. Last time they met was probably the most one-sided we've seen in a while, 24-4, the Storm over the Roosters.
Yeah, as you said, no one expects these two teams to come up against one another and run away with a game. It's always been very, very close games of football, usually decided by 1 point. But last time round, the Melbourne Storm got the chocolates. Will it happen again? I'm expecting the Melbourne Storm to win this weekend, but it'll be a lot closer than the last time these two teams went around. It's going to be a massive game. Obviously, games like this can define a team's performances for the rest of the year. Obviously, everyone's vying for the top 4 spot. And this weekend, obviously, the forward pack's going at each other. We just saw there Jesse Bromwich up against Jared Robbie Hargreaves. It's going to be amazing clash that in itself. But two prominent teams from two big cities. It's going to be amazing.
Mouth-watering clashes all over the park in some of the head-to-head battles, and we'll talk more about that in just a moment. But both coming off really strong round 5 wins. 52-18 Storm over the Bulldogs we spoke about earlier. Roosters 26-18 against the Sharks. Are you expecting the scorelines to be that one-sided in this game, and are you expecting the scoring to be as high as both these two teams have put on the park in previous weeks?
No, I wouldn't think so. I think this is going to be a much closer game than what last weekend's scorelines were. As we know, it's gone right down to the wire and so many clashes against these two sides. But I think it's going to be it's going to be a fantastic game of football. It'll be mistake-free. I know how both these coaches work. The less mistakes you make, the more chance you have of winning. They're both great coaches, and obviously this rivalry. I mean, they're two big cities, two powerhouse teams coming together, and it's just the history shows it's going to be a fantastic game of football. I think the Melbourne Storm will win. Will it be a comfortable win? I don't think by as much as last weekend, but I think it may be more than the 1 point.
As I said, since 2017, we've played each other 9 times. The Storm have won 5, Roosters 4. However, it's been the closeness of the scores which has been truly remarkable, and you've delved back through the annals of history to crunch the numbers for us. What have you come up with, Robbie Kearns?
Now, I'm going to have to read off my paper here because I'm not that smart, Sammy, but the winners of 6 of the 9 games played have been by 3 or less points. 3 of these have gone to golden point, with the Roosters winning 2 and the Melbourne Storm winning 1. 2 games were won in the dying minutes of regular time, both by the Storm. On top of this, the 2 clubs have won the last 4 premierships and 6 of the last 9, which is amazing. And these 2 clubs have won 8 of the last 10 minor premierships.
It's incredible when you look back at that history, and it just goes to show what we're hopefully in store for this Friday night. So how much did these past results play on the upcoming game? Of course, 2018, the grand final as well. So they haven't just done it in the regular season, they've done it at the pointy end of it as well. What kind of factor does the history play in the upcoming game this Friday?
Yeah, I'm sure Craig Bellamy, with all due respect to the Canterbury Bulldogs, I'm sure Craig Bellamy have these guys up for a big game this coming Friday night with the rivalry. Come Friday night, history doesn't matter. It just comes to who's better on the night, and fingers crossed the Melbourne Storm will be there. I mean, these two teams have been dominant in the NRL for the last 10 years. They've been basically dominating the whole club. They've obviously played in that 2018 grand final, and they did a real job on the Melbourne Storm. So that's in the back of the Melbourne Storm players' heads. Not too many players left from there, but it's going to be a wonderful game this Friday night, and I'm sure they're going to throw everything at us. They're without Luke Keary, without Boyd Cordner, so they're down on a couple of big-name troops. But so are we, obviously without Dale Fanucan as well. So it's going to be a fantastic game of football. It's going to be close, but I think the Melbourne Storm might get the chocolates.
So, as we spoke about before, mouth-watering head-to-head clashes all across the park. You mentioned some in the forward packs, but at the fullback position, the New South Wales Origin team is about 5 weeks away from being named the squad. The fullback showdown between Tedesco and Pappenhausen is absolutely on for young and old. Both these guys have scored 7 tries for the year. Pappenhausen has got the 6 line breaks, Tedesco the 5. Statistically, they're absolutely in alignment. The Storm, number 1, does have the added advantage of being the top shelf goal kicker as well. He's landed 8 conversions against the Bulldogs last week, 5 against the Broncos the week before. Number 1 point scorer in the competition. This is going to be worth the price of admission alone. Who do you see getting on top in this encounter? Not only for the game, but when it comes to that New South Wales fullback position. Is Pappenhausen any chance of usurping James Tedesco?
Well, Teddy Tedesco has been the form player of the competition for about the last 4 or 5 years. So it's going to be very hard for a young Ryan Pappenhausen to come in and kick Teddy over his number 1 spot for New South Wales. But in saying that, he definitely would have done better last year if Ryan Pappenhausen was somewhere in the top 17 in that last game. They had an injury in the back line somewhere, and if you had Ryan Pappenhausen, they would have done put on a much better show. But yeah, I think Craig Bellamy came up during the week saying Teddy was a better player than Ryan Pappenhausen. Got his words muddled up. I'm sure he wouldn't swap Ryan Pappenhausen for anyone in the competition. But I think what he was basically saying is that Teddy's been a fine player for a number of years, and it's going to be very hard to out him of his number 1 spot for New South Wales. But it will happen in due time, but maybe not this year. But I can see, as you said, both players having a major impact this Friday night. For the Roosters, I think they're going to most probably depend on Teddy a little bit more than what the Melbourne Storm will be depending on Ryan Pappenhausen. We've got some gun players, obviously Cameron Munster. We've got Smithy, number 9, Brandon Smith, Harry Grant coming off the bench. So we can rely on a few other guys, but these, obviously Tedesco's been a fine player for a number of years, and they're going to be relying on him a bit more than what Ryan Pappenhausen will be this Friday night.
Yeah, and we can't wait for that clash, as we can't wait for the whole clash on Friday night at AAMI Park. Make sure you get your tickets and get there to support the Melbourne Storm. And for New South Wales, from an Origin point of view, even though that Ryan Tedesco deserves to be the walk-up start to that position, to have a guy like Ryan Pappenhausen coming along, just nipping at his heels, it's actually a good thing. It's a good problem to have for New South Wales, and I'm sure Tedesco would like that challenge. Even hearing that there's a conversation taking place would probably bristle him a little bit, and it's only good things for New South Wales, much as it pains me to say. Yeah,
without a doubt. I think competition's good for any team, whether it be a representative team or the Melbourne Storm or the Roosters. So if you've got young guys coming through, it keeps you absolutely on the top of your game, and that's exactly what we'll be seeing from Teddy Tedesco in the next 5 weeks, hoping that he'll retain the number 1 spot. But as I said, Ryan Pappenhausen, a star. If I was going to say star of the future, he already is a star, but he'll be around for a long time to come.
Well, speaking of Ryan Pappenhausen, let's just have a look at some of his finest work. A try that he scored last week is absolutely worth seeing again.
Yeah, absolutely. You see big Felice Kafusi coming through, Jerome Hughes, and the man we spoke about earlier, Georgie Jennings, throws it in the field, and mate, Kyle Flanagan was in front of him by about 5 metres with about 10 metres to go. And somehow, with his blistering speed, comes through, scores a try that'll be one of the tries of the year without a doubt.
The other part of that, though, that stands out to me, and especially when you're looking at higher honours for a player, because you'd know this firsthand, playing for New South Wales or playing for your country, the willingness to work harder and to go further. Look at where Ryan Pappenhausen started that run from to where he finishes up. That's a massive tick as well, not just for the highlight of it, but for the work rate of it.
Yeah, without a doubt. And as I said, with 5 minutes ago, or 10 minutes ago, he's 5 minutes behind Kyle Flanagan. And for Kyle Flanagan as a halfback, it's not like a big slug in the front rower. So he's got a bit of speed on him as well. But as it said, it all comes down to want. And Ryan Pappenhausen really wanted that ball. He really wanted to score that try, and that's exactly what he did for Melbourne Storm last weekend.
Hopefully plenty of those to come this Friday night. You know we're doing something right on Inside Storm. We're 3 weeks in now to doing the show. Actually, this was our 4th week, Robbie Kearns. And you know we're doing something well when they give us access to the very top echelons of the Melbourne Storm. We're lucky enough to be joined now by the co-captain. He's a 2-time premiership player and New South Wales Origin rep as well. He joins us from his home base, Dale Fanucan. How are you, mate?
Hey guys, thanks for having me on.
It's our pleasure. Now, the biggest question on everybody's mind, of course, is when will you be back?
Yeah, I'll be back next week. it was always probably looking at about the 6-week mark with the injury that I'd had. So, yeah, things been tracking really well. Sort of looking to come back this week, but it was a bit of a shorter turnaround being a Friday night game. So, given that we've got a longer turnaround next week heading to the Warriors, it was the safer option, I think.
Hey, Big Finn, it's Kearnsy here, mate. A lot's been said about Harry Grant. Obviously played for the Tigers last year, back in Melbourne Storm colours for the first time last weekend. How do you think he went last weekend, and what sort of impact has he had on the club so far?
Yeah, he played really well. As I said, he done his injury a similar time to when I've done mine, and we've been working closely alongside each other for the last 6 weeks, doing our rehab together. And as I said, he's been doing a lot of skill work during that period. He's always looking to do extra craft during those periods. So I think that's something that he's added a lot for us. Obviously him and Brandon have really strong running games, so it's good having both of those guys on the field at the same time, having those two dynamics.
And this weekend, we're up against the powerhouse of the Sydney City in the Roosters. Obviously, massive rivalry between these two clubs. How do you think we're going to go this Friday night?
Yeah, they've always been close games. I think the last 6 games we've had 3 golden point, 3 decided by golden point. One of the last games we played where Paps kicked the field goal from about 40 metres out to equal the game to then go on and win the game was one of the closest games that I've been involved in, and that's probably the type of game that I'll be expecting again on the weekend. I think the other games have been decided by a try or less, so it just goes to show the closeness of the games and the quality of the Roosters.
Now, Dale, Storm in your club, it's back next week. This is a brilliant initiative by the club. You and Felice Kafusi heading out to the Altona Roosters. How important is this, and just how much of an impact has this had, what the club are doing with the In Your Club program?
Yeah, I think it's great. I remember even myself as a kid, being from the South Coast, we didn't have a lot of exposure to professional rugby league players coming to our club or our school, but I do remember that when it did happen, how much it meant to me, and their memories that I've got for life. It didn't matter if I didn't recognise who the player was, as long as they had the emblem on. I think we had funnily enough, the Roosters came to our school, and South Sydney Rabbitohs. I think when I was in primary school, their memories that lasted me forever. And if we can be that, Felice and I, for some young kids that are coming through, aspiring to play, in the NRL, then I'm very happy to be part of that.
Dale, we haven't got time to get you to just reach over to probably your left or your right and get the guitar out and just regale us. You've just got a wonderful voice. I love what you bring to the table musically. But while you've been injured, you've been spending a little bit of time in the Storm box. What can you tell us and what can't you tell us about your time just sitting and observing Craig Bellamy and the team in action?
Yeah, there's not too much I can tell. As I said to Kearnsy, what happens in the box stays in the box. But I think it's pretty well known and documented that Craig's quite vocal in there, and whatever message gets passed down usually gets filtered through our trainers out in the field. So that's about all I can say.
I'm sure you've been learning a lot. We can't wait to have you back out there. We really appreciate you joining us on Inside Storm. Thank you very much.
No worries, guys. Thanks for having me on.
Great access. Dale Fanucan, 2-time premiership player with the Storm, New South Wales Origin rep. Just wonderful to have a chat to him. He's much loved, isn't he, Dale Fanucan? And as I said before, he plays a mean guitar.
Yeah, he's a wonderful person, Dale, and as you said, he's good on the guitar, but even better out on the field, and can't wait to have him back next week.
Absolutely. Hey, a reminder too, we have a double pass up for grabs to one of the biggest games of the year, one of the most important days of the year on the calendar, the Anzac Day clash against the New Zealand Warriors on Sunday, April 25th. All you need to do to win, comment below your score prediction, Storm v Sydney Roosters. Robbie, your score prediction?
It's going to be an interesting game. As I said, I think it's going to be a very tight game of football, but we will have some points in us. You can't hold back a guy like Pappenhausen, as we just mentioned. Munsey's in fine form at the moment. So I think it's going to go right down to the wire, but I think it's going to be a close-scoring game, 16 points to 10. Melbourne Storm over the Roosters.
Golden point again for me. Cam Munster field goal wins.
Is that right? You're looking for that Cinderella story?
Why not?
Yeah, why not?
This is a clash that's delivered. every single time. So I'll go for the thrilling finish again. That's all from us on tonight's Inside Stormers, proudly presented by RedZed. RedZed is the Australian lender that specialises in providing loans for the self-employed. A big thank you to the legend to my left, Robbie Kearns, for joining us. It was a pleasure having you on again, mate. And all the members and fans, thank you so much for tuning in. We will see you next Wednesday. Enjoy Storm Roosters Friday night, Amy Park. Can't wait.